good evening and welcome back once again to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Stevie Mart, and you can see in the dark light of night we have Stevie Woods joining us. Not this Stevie Woods that's going to be part of the new regime under Mart and Neil again, but of course our very own Stevie Woods, and it's a warm welcome to every single one of yous out there. My God, what a difference a couple of hours make, because I was on here earlier on reacting to the glorious news that was the misery was over. The French Revolution at Celtic was a failure, and with it went the cat in the hat, because Mr. Tisdale, who was partly responsible for bringing in Wilfred Nancy, had to exit too. It was a double done, and there was a lot of joy, and that led to speculation. And I was asked the question, who did I think it was going to be? And I'll be honest, I think it was as clear as day, let's be honest here, but I said that there was only two men that could come in at this pivotal point and really hit the ground running. It was either going to be Martinelli once again, or it was going to be Ange Postecoglou. And it is, of course, St. Martin, who's returning to the end of the season. But what does that mean? Does that mean and beyond? So Stevie, first and foremost, mate, you want to give your views on it. What is your views, firstly, of the departure of Tisdale and Nancy, and then, of course, the return of the Mart?
Okay, so firstly, I need to apologise to the viewers tonight. I have been banished to my conservatory because I'm under pain of death. If I wake the rest of the family, then my laptop is going to be taken from me, never to return, kind of like Mr. Tisdale, hopefully. But it's far too important a piece of news to miss out. So I've put on a couple of extra layers just to keep the freezing at bay. Overall, I am not. What's the word to use? I've been kind of thinking while I was at work, what is the kind of term for this whole debacle? And I'm going to go back to probably the Scottish Cup final. Wilfred had to go. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that he had to go. His sheer ineptitude in terms of he wanted to play a formation that he was comfortable with. I don't have a problem with that.
Yep.
However, when you go on a wee run, and everybody could see that it wasn't suitable for Scottish football, for Celtic, but he stuck with it. He stuck with it, expecting things to change. That was the part for me where I thought this guy's just not quite got the kind of nuance that's required to look at a situation and say, even for the short term, until I can get extra reinforcements in through the transfer window, I don't see this system working for me at this moment in time. So because he stuck with it, refused to change, was really his team selection was like throwing 11 guys out on a pitch and see what happens. That was never going to end well. And 2 wins out of 8 games kind of says it all. I need to be honest, I have no pleasure in the guy and his backroom team losing their jobs. But I think the reason that they were in there in the first place goes higher up the tree.
Absolutely.
And also with Mr. Tisdale, somebody decided to look at him and thought, this is a guy that we want in our club, bringing in, players, managers, whatever. A quick Google search, as we've seen in social media, probably, you've maybe covered this already, Steve-o, but a quick Google search kind of gives you his track record with all the clubs that he's previously worked with. He's never really lasted any more than kind of 3 months in any one position. Now, surely alarm bells at that point must have been ringing. Who thought, looking at that record, that this was the man who was going to, revolutionise the transfer system at Celtic? It's unbelievable, but yes, I am glad now that we've got St. Martin back in. May he be forever blessed. And
yes.
Sean, Fozzie, my namesake is back. after, kind of, did he resign, or did he just have enough and couldn't work under such incompetence? Yes, so he is back, and hopefully the remainder of the season will now start to be a lot more positive.
That is it. We can start looking a wee bit forward. We can start trying to be positive, and it's self-explanatory. We can see the comments there. Everybody's buzzing. Let us know. We'll try and get you guys involved as much. Obviously, we are happy. What do you think this means, though? What does this appointment mean? It says that it's going to be until the end of the season. We've all heard Martin Neil's interview, and he even sort of alluded it'll give them more time to make the right appointment. He then talked again once about this sort of somebody newer, younger, that could go 2, 3, 4 years. So at this moment in time, is that maybe just playing his cards close to his chest, or do you think that there's something else in it? Do you think that this is, I don't want to spoil the mood, do you think this is a prepping ground for Sean Maloney, should perhaps they go on and do well and get a double, or just the league? Or is it something else? I mentioned the likes of a Martinez, who's worked with Maloney further down the road, because there's going to be key decisions made here, Stevie, because they're going to be here for January. They're going to be influencing signing policy. They're going to be bringing guys in, because now that Tisdale's gone, it's going to fall onto those two guys to identify and go out there and tell them what they need. But most importantly, mate, whenever he left, we all know that Martin O'Neill had alluded to the fact that he had sat down with members of the board and had a very frank conversation with them around what is currently there at the club, what quality there is in that squad, and more importantly, what he felt that they needed. So he had already gave them a wee nudge to tell them what's going to happen. Will he be supported, and are you confident that they can get the guys to see us through?
Am I confident? I'm never confident when it comes to the board. As I say, going back to the Scottish Cup final, that really should have been a wake-up call for the board at that point. Regardless of what Brendan said, we could all see we lost to an Aberdeen team that we really shouldn't have lost to. We kind of turned up on the day, I thought, with a wee bit of attitude of, well, we never really get beaten at Hampden, therefore the players that we have available will get us through this. So in losing that game, I thought we should have had a much stronger summer transfer window than we eventually turned out that we did. We didn't strengthen in the places that everybody could see we needed replacements in, striker particularly. A right-sided forward to replace Nicholas Kuhn. Maybe a wee bit more strength and depth in defence, just to provide us that extra bit of cover. So this isn't just going back over Wilfred's time with Celtic. This goes back a wee bit further. Yes, I think the board now, having made the brave decision to sack him, they could have. We talked in the last couple of podcasts where sheer bloody mindedness would have turned around and said, we don't bow to fan pressure. We're going to give the guy 2 windows. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It was very, very quiet, as we'd said. After being statement after statement after statement when Brendan went. We now come into a situation where it was all quiet. Wilfred, day after day, was turning up, giving his post or pre-match interviews, this, that, and the next thing. And, okay, so now they've made the decision, they've made the announcement, Martin will be here, and, they've said he will be here to the end of the season. So now, two things in terms of, yes, I could very happily see Sean being mentored under Martin for a kind of longer spell, possibly taking the job at some point in the future. Maybe not at the end of the season. I think that might be a wee bit early for him. But again, I think it gives them a reasonable amount of time to identify somebody better. We mentioned Michael Nicholson's interview about doing due diligence and checking your preferred candidates. That's all well and good, but we really need to now seriously look at not just getting in a Celtic man, but getting in the best man. And
Yes,
that period of time between now and the summer will be very important. And I'm going to ask you a question here, Steve, right? I've had conversation, bearing in mind I'm slightly older than you. I have been on the terraces with John Barnes in charge, with Lou Macari in charge, with Tony Mowbray in charge, even coming into just, when Martin got the job, and then when Gordon Strachan got the job, I remember a huge backlash. Oh no, we can't have Gordon Strachan. He's played for our rivals and he's not a Celtic man, and this, that, the next thing. If you're running a business where you are looking to recruit somebody, in this case, a manager, how do you feel? Do you think Celtic should go out into the footballing world and advertise the job of manager becoming available and see who actually puts in an application for that job, and then run, your interviews and stuff from the candidates who actually show interest, rather than you picking names out of a kind of footballing database, if you like?
Well, I mean, on that, obviously, we'll round back onto what the sort of current appointment will mean for the season going on. But looking beyond that, if it's not to be Martin O'Neill for any time past the summer, to be honest, I don't really know how big jobs like that tend to get advertised. It's not like you're running the mill. We know that we see certain things, like you'll see adverts for Celtic and it'll be like for data analysts and things like that. So there is positions that can be held at the football club which they will put out to tenure, which should be for people with qualifications and coaching badges or whatever. So that, but how exactly does a managerial vacancy come up, other than it's news and you get approached by agents?
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about a section in the Daily Record or anything like that. You know what I mean? Yes, I think there should be at some point, some channels through either UEFA or FIFA to say this. This is a position that's going to become available in the summer. The one thing I did agree when Wilfred gave his last press conference, and he talked about the fact that generally when managers come in, they've got 4 or 5 weeks of pre-season, and that gives them time to work on the training pitch and get new ideas across, and this, that, and the next thing, get players in. Wilfred didn't have that, and that I totally agree with him. He was kind of thrown in a wee bit at the deep end, but he took the job knowing that was the case. So I would think there must be, if you look, any manager across Europe or the rest of the world tuning into to Sky Sports tonight and see that the job is available, Martin has taken it with the proviso that it's probably only going to be to the end of the season. It may be longer, we don't know, but let's just give that as a kind of bullet point there, and say, that is a job that I would potentially like. I think I would be good at. Therefore, I'm going to get in touch with Celtic to say, throw my name in the hat.
I mean, I think when we look at it, I went through the earlier on the candidates, if you will, on the sort of the Sky Bet, and to say it was underwhelming is, putting it lightly. There's a lot of names there, and you find this all the time, that any time that the Celtic job has come round, that generally speaking, there isn't any massive standout candidate. Now, if you take it back to whenever we had gotten Gordon Strachan, whenever we had gotten, even before that, when it was Neil Lennon, when we wind the clock back, your Ronnie Dylas and even your Rodgers the first time, there just seemed to be far more a selection of managers that really sort of raised your eyebrow and go, I like a wee bit of that. Yeah. I just feel that it's, and the thing is there is many managers that are out there that are either, at a certain club that's maybe not of a certain stature, but they are very good, or there is also guys that are out there that are not on a job that you've forgot about and that are good managers. But no, it'd be interesting to see how it goes round, and I think that definitely it should be considered to be a big opportunity. Folk will sniff at the idea of Celtic being a big job. We know that some of these clowns that are on the likes of some of the talk sport, and it's very English-centric in the mindset, and they sort of play down the gravitas that comes with at Celtic. And I understand that a lot of people will also, on the flip side, and I've seen it in the comments, will say no manager of any sort of quality will touch Celtic based on what has went before it.
Yeah.
And all these things are very true. But I do definitely agree that Celtic need to cast the net far and wide, because when we actually look at what we now know of the interviewing process that went down before Wilfred Nancy came in, it was Kieran McKenna, it was Robbie Keane was looked at, Wilfred Nancy and Ange Postecoglou. Now, one of them is going back the way to Ange Postecoglou, which again, I'll be honest, I sat on here and I said it at the top of the show. If Ange Postecoglou was primed to come back in the right environment, would I have him back? Yes, I would. Now, in the ideal world, we don't live in the ideal world. I would rather it to be someone that I would consider to be a progressive, up-and-coming manager that's a bit more youthful, a bit more vibrant. And again, I look at, and it's not going to happen, but we sniffed at the idea of Enzo Maresca, right? We did. But then look at what happened at Chelsea. He's now apparently getting primed for either Juventus or Man City. So that probably means that ship has sailed. But if you were to revisit it and say Enzo Maresca is going to come to Celtic, we're going to give him the tools to do it, yes, I'm all here for something like that. But we find ourselves in the here and now. We haven't backed away, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. But then that'll bring this question to you, mate. Should we have just stuck with him? The whole point.
Martin O'Neill.
Yes. Should we have just stuck with it?
Absolutely. At the point in time Martin took over and did, what was it, his 7 games, the proof was every point that went on that board, every point that we clawed back to the Hearts lead in the table at that point. It was there for all to see. It was stability. We all talked about it's not great football, but it's points on the board. And at the end of the day, that's what we needed. As I say, we had a poor summer. We didn't recruit well. We kind of stumbled the style of football that Brendan started the season with, very side to side and passing back rather than passing forwards. That we were getting stale, and every club gets to that. Whether you're winning, whether you're not winning, you've got to be in a situation where you are refreshing the squad, refreshing managerial ideas. So it's not just maybe the manager who comes in. You maybe gets a new assistant, or he gets somebody that joins his training background staff and stuff like that. You've got to kind of move and refresh all the time. So yes, when Martin came in, as I say, we weren't hugely impressed with the style of football he was playing, because again, Martin had injuries to key players that he had to kind of compensate for. But what Martin did give you was points on the board. And when you watch the players out there, and we have discussed this in previous podcasts, the effort seemed to rise. What they were putting in for Martin and for the fans, obviously, but you could tell they were enjoying working under Martin. He was giving them the tools to go out and say, concentrate on the basics, concentrate on how good a player you can be, and the rest will fall into place. That was there for everybody to see. So I said at the time, I think, the first podcast I did with you guys, Martin O'Neill should have been told, you have this job until you tell us you don't want to do it anymore. You're 73 years old, we get that, but you have a lot of gravitas at this club. You've got a lot of credit in the bank. You are obviously a great manager. He's very open in saying he doesn't really take a lot of the training sessions. He leaves that to Sean and Fozzie, and that's fine. I don't mind that. But if you're a good manager and you can build players up to fit that Celtic jersey, then that's where, Martin's strength lies. So I was very, surprised when Wilfred came in, when he came in. It wouldn't have been my choice. And obviously now, as we've seen with Mr. Tisdale getting the big size 10 up his backside, then, absolutely, I think it's the right decision. Martin will come back in. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say he's going to go, undefeated for the rest of the season or whatever. I'm not going to make those kind of bold predictions, but he will certainly get more out of our current squad than Wilfred could.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And obviously I see some of the people in the comments saying that they felt there was maybe a wee bit of a element of mutiny on the cards, and that's not necessarily good, and that's not what you want. I understand that, I really do, and it's never the way you want things to go down. Do I believe that perhaps it was something that was at play? Yes, we've all heard rumours, WhatsApp, CSC and all that garbage. Everybody's in the know and saying these things, but no, nothing really. But there was the rumours of senior players having a bit of a disagreement with them. Kieran Tierney was touted. We heard the comments from McCowan. It didn't paint a good picture. And even basic things where your senior players, your Casper Schmeichels, for all that you want to say about him, your Cal McGregors, they were not present for press conferences. They weren't present for post-match things. And that tells you a lot, because normally they come out and, for rightly or wrongly, maybe that's because they don't want to have to come out and essentially toe the party line and put on a united front to backing somebody that they probably don't believe in. Now, does that then make it fair on the guys like Trusty or whoever else get chucked into the lion's den of the media to have to just sit there and nod along and go, I know, we're all behind them? No, but that's the way it is. And maybe that's because they've been making moves behind the scenes. I suggested that. Whether it's the case or not, it doesn't matter. But you mentioned that if that is what happened with the players there, I think you can shelve it, because we all saw, as you said, the unity, the togetherness and what it meant. We saw that sort of emotional send-off where he was going round the players and speaking to them, and the way that they get sent off when we thought that was him riding off into the sun at Celtic Park. So I think instantly, the return of the likes of Fotheringham, the likes of Martin O'Neill, when they walk into training, that instantly lifts up the character. Now, the one thing is because they will also know that they are going to get him to the end of the season, I think for me, that really does change things. I thought the dynamic of it just being a rolling uncertainty. I could be here today and I could be gone tomorrow. That's put to bed. The players know this is who they've got. This is what the expectations are. And I'm not saying because they didn't have that stability that meant performances might fluctuate, but it could be a contributing factor, because folk don't know if they're going to be here or there. They don't know if a new manager's going to come in, doesn't know if they want them, and their heads could be all over the place. I do get it. I just think that it gives us an element of stability, and sometimes it's better the devil that you know. I think that the addition of Maloney, and again, come back to this idea of has he been prepped for Celtic at some point? I'll be honest with you, I think he is a guy who is more comfortable in a number 2 position. Now, we said that we didn't want Kennedy thrust onto guys before, but I think that if you look at it and you were to keep him around for whoever the next manager may well be, for continuity purposes, for buy-in for the players, and even what I say as well, a guy like Fornham, he just seems like a really energetic and the kind of character we want. Yes, he was a former player. He's not really the old boys act, because he went away and done his own thing, his own right, and he was only really brought in because of the link with him, Maloney, and O'Neill. So I think these guys could come in and they could be the future of the coaching staff, and you get someone in. And again, I seen something tonight and someone might imagine if it was Ange, Maloney, Fozzie and a couple others, I would take that. Again, is it going back the way? Potentially, but that also in itself could be something that would be quite fresh and exciting. So I just think that we would find ourselves in a good place. Now, what I want to do here is just in case nobody's seen it, I'm going to bring up how the club decided to announce it. There was obviously a brief wee statement that came out early telling us that Nancy was up the road, and then obviously that one there. Now, there was a few things there. I'll just read through it, try not to trip over my words as normal, but it just says, Martin O'Neill is delighted to be back at Celtic's manager at the end of the season and looking forward to working with the players. The report back tomorrow for training at Lennoxtown. Now, there was obviously videos as well of folk were saying what's going on. I believe that Alfred Nonce was somewhere up north in a hotel, and couple of days off. So he's going to be joined, as we said, Maloney, Foreign, Stephen McManus and Gavin Strachan, Stevie Woods, who there was a lot of question marks over, and Greg Wallace to oversee it. While speaking at the Celtic TV, Martin O'Neill also expressed his sympathy for Wilfred Nonce following his departure. Of course he's going to say that, and on that what he said is, I'm obviously very pleased and privileged to be back at the club, but in the circumstances like this, with Wilfred leaving again, it just seems a wee bit strange at this moment. We know we're in a big fight and we're going to try and win the league. Set your stall out. I know he's got to say that, but that's what you want to hear. I don't want to hear, we'll see how the performances get on and then it'll come. I just want to hear, we're going to try and win the league.
The ball is the ball.
Exactly. Ping pong, the ball's the ball. It won't be easy, although it never is, but we're halfway through the season and we've got a big fight in our hands, so we have to up to the challenge. That's the kind of basic chat that I want to hear out of my manager. I don't want to hear, we'll suck it and see, and we'll see how it pans out. But in no doubt here that he comes in, and yes, will it be stressful? Will it be a lot of expectation? Is it rolling the dice? Because a lot of folk have seen it. I've seen the replies and folk are saying, I don't want this to tarnish his reputation.
No.
It's a big gamble, but he's a grown-up man, and nobody will have twisted his arm around his back. I think equally as much as he's got a relationship with Dermot Desmond and an affiliation with the club and us fans, at the same time, if the circumstances weren't right and he felt that it was a losing battle, he probably wouldn't have put himself into the seat again, would he have?
Yeah, well, I think the first time he came, I think he said it was his wife that was actually talking him out of not coming back, because, as you say, there was that potential. She could obviously see you're a lot older than you were when you were in that job first time around. It's a lot of pressure. I think what Martin has going for him is he's very good at the kind of saying the right thing. Even when he was doing his pundit, he would never come out with too much that was way out there. He would always be very, I know the right thing to say. I'll get a wee dig in, when he requires to get a dig in, but then he gives you a wee jokey comment to kind of take the edge off of that. So he's very, very experienced in knowing the right things to say to the press. So I have no doubts in that regard that he will be, right back in there, looking forward to, his comments and interviews in the lead up to his first game again. So that is something, that I'm not worried about in terms of Martin being Martin. So yes, I think it's going to be down to just, settling things down over the next couple of days, putting behind everybody, just what the last 33 days have done to the club, and just saying, look, I can't do anything about, the Wilfred tenure, but let's just draw the line. We have 18, 19 games left in the season. We know that at the moment we're behind Hearts. We've got Rangers now level with us. We've seen the kind of improvement that their manager has brought to them. So it's really just a case of knuckle down, do what we've got to do to just start building a bit of momentum. Whether that's, as I say, going the rest of the season, I'm not going to be, as I say, looking at, now that Martin's back in, we're going to go undefeated and we're going to romp this league. No, I think all three teams in, the top three positions will drop some amount of points. But as I say, I'm much, much happier knowing that Martin will get us where we need to be. And if, at the end of the season, if he doesn't win the league, right, I'm not really want to jinx this. But if we get to the end of the season and he doesn't win the league, I don't think anybody would put that on him specifically. So as I say, things, whatever will be. But yeah, I'm definitely, using this as a a starting point. You know, that the rest of the season starts right now or tomorrow tomorrow morning when he turns up for his first training session. And yes, I'm quite sure the majority, if not all, the training staff, the playing staff will be, absolutely over the moon to see him.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, let's have a look then at what he's facing up against now. Obviously, there was the sort of debate of should we have kept Martinelli on at the end of the season? Did we gamble? Was it a unique set of circumstances? Could we have gave Martinelli, we all know it, a couple of games, a cup final, would it have changed their fortunes? I think if the board had set their heart on making the change and running with Wilfred Nancy, it wouldn't have mattered whether we kept Martin for another 2 games, another 3 games. It was always going to happen, and ultimately we were going to get the carnage that he brought with changing things. Now, his first 8 games, he's only 8 games that were a total failure. There was
a lot more.
Yes, exactly. There was a lot of big games in there for him. Let's be totally honest, right? Doesn't change how they panned out. Kicking off with Hearts, Roma, St Mirren, the cup final, Dundee United, Aberdeen, Rangers, an on-form Marvel. So there's quite a few there. Let's have a wee look at what's going to be up against St Martin. Obviously, starting off with Dundee United, there's a great opportunity there to right a few wrongs, after that reverse in the last game there. Falkirk, always organised, we are. Auchinleck, Talbot. I'd be feeling a lot more confident than I was about that there now. I would expect us to go and horse them now. Whereas
big potential banana skin there, because Auchinleck have absolutely nothing to lose. Just a huge payday for them as a club financially. But should we get into that game with no fear, I think they'll be a wee bit more fearful now that Martin's in charge. But that to me was a definite banana skin for had we still had Wilfred.
Absolutely. But now we look at it, as I say, so I'm looking at kicking off with Dundee United. Falkirk, I think, is a tough away day
at home, so that's a bonus as well.
And then of course we've got the European games sandwiched in between, or Hearts sandwiched in between the European games, and a reverse against Falkirk, and of course Aberdeen. Now, in terms of a first 8 fixtures, there's a lot of big sort of things in there, particularly the European ones, and the big acid test being away, Tynecastle against Hearts. How do you see this one panning out? Because again, looking at the Hearts result, a lot of people have turned around and went hammed under Martinelli's watch. So now we'll find out, won't we?
The thing about that, looking at it, is it's obviously bookended between 2 European ties. We've seen in seasons past, regardless of whether it's been Martin, Brendan, anybody else, Ange, we don't tend to recover well from European ties. Especially, I think the Bologna game is away, so there'll be a wee bit of travel involved there. But it's going to be an acid test in terms of how Hearts play between now and then as well. I think if they drop some points and it gets that wee bit closer, where maybe Martin can kind of get us back level, I think again I don't see Hearts going the rest of the season unbeaten. So yes, absolutely, we have a bit of positivity, a bit of still a bit of nerves, because we want things to the last 33 days kind of push that back out of the limelight. Let's get back to just taking it a game at a time, getting hopefully points on the board, building a bit of momentum and a bit of running, get players in, which is probably absolutely, because we're not going to last the rest of the season with who we have at the moment. Even with the guys coming back from injury, we need to supplement the squad, particularly up front. But also for me on the right hand side. So yes, it's going to be interesting in terms of how how all those things now fit together between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to go to a larger sort of thing. I'm not going to bring up, I'm just going to read some stuff off. There's a larger section there on the Celtic website around about the sort of signing. And again, Martin O'Neill's just saying, very pleased, in fact, honoured to be asked to manage a great club again. Looking forward to working once again with the players. Now, he then goes on to say, for me, I've been asked to take this great job on again. My focus will be to try on getting back to winning ways if we can. We need everyone to be right behind us. This is something here that I think is important. He's obviously making a call for unity. And of course, as we saw after the game against Rangers, unity between what was on the pitch and off the pitch wasn't quite there. I think that's safe to say. Understandably, I'm not going to flog this dead horse. I've said my piece on it. Understandably, tempers frayed and boiled over, and it got a wee bit unsavoury. It's something that we don't want to see. There was obviously a lot of sorry, somebody's handing me something there. There was obviously a lot of anger, and we don't want that to see. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, because I see a lot of people saying it here that, you know, this isn't a tactic for the board. Nostalgia's not going to change anything. It's not going to buy them any credit in the bank. And ultimately, those who appointed Tisdale, those who signed off on Wilfred Nonsi, and I'm basically talking here about, first and foremost, Michael Nicholson, they need binned as well. So you'll never lose sight of that. And I will always say, continue to try and move forward and ask for meaningful change. But at the same time, on a personal level, I feel that we need unity more than ever now. I said this the last time when Martin O'Neill came in. We are so fractured, we are so fragile, and the support is imperative. Now, firstly, this could be an easy layup for the club to get round the table with the Green Brigade and try and integrate them back in. This situation, trying to save this season, trying to get unity in the stands, trying to get the full backing of the team with the noise and everything else that we need, trying to avoid the regular pantomime out front of the stadium, that needs to be taken care of. That is bigger than egos. That is bigger than the egos of the board. That is bigger than the egos of any fan group. I'm saying, you know, folk might not like me saying that, but there'll be egos on both sides, and neither want to admit wrongdoings. They need to just come together. They need to squash it. They need to come to something of a ceasefire or a truce and try and get it in. Do you think that's something that could happen?
I certainly hope it could happen. Whether I see it happening, I doubt that very much. I'm trying to remember, just when you were talking about that, I think somebody posted a quote from Jock Stein going back to probably, you know, the 60s when he was in charge, and it was like, a club who are not together will never be successful. You know, so it's this kind of disparity between the club and the board, and the fans. It's never, you know, it's not a new thing. We've been through the Whites and the Kellys and the Grants as the board when it was a private, you know, club, and then Fergus the Bonnet came along and did away with all that. Again, you know, built great credit with the fans to say, I'm not going to move Celtic on as much as you're going to move Celtic on. So yes, absolutely. As I say, that, you know, the fans have an idea of what they want, but I wouldn't want the fans running the club, because fans have, you know, like every fan has a slightly different opinion of what they think is best for the club.
Of course.
So you've got a board there who, in terms of their business sense, have done extremely well over the last 20 odd years. You know, we've gone every year on year, we've raised the amount of money and the profitability of the club. Okay, a tick in the box. Now, not everybody's going to agree with that, because it's a football club. It's not a business, and it's not there just to make money. I do get that. I totally agree with that. What we need to do now is, rather than Paul Tisdale type of character, we need to get proper football experience on that board to say, we know, you know, in terms of connections with agents, we know where we're going to get players. I don't want to mention the opposition, obviously, but I did see a bit of a YouTube clip earlier today from Paul John Dykes doing the Celtic podcast that he does. And again, he was saying that the players who we get, obviously the right back that we got on loan from Bournemouth, these guys are punted about. Agents are throwing these names out willy-nilly just to see where they land. Somebody at some club will take a wee bite on that player and say, oh, yeah, we'll take them if they're available, rather than let's see who Celtic identify. No, this is a guy that we want. We've watched him, we've scouted him, the data analytics or whatever they're using and saying, this is who we want. Let's go out and get that guy. Okay, it might not be a guy who we're willing to pay amount of money that his club want for him, okay, but at least we go for him with a reasonable offer, not your usual bargain basement. We need to go and say, how much is this guy worth? Okay, everybody, everything we look at says this player is worth £10 million. Let's try a wee initial offer of maybe 8.5. No, we can't get him for that. 9.5. But you don't go in for an offer and say we'll give you £2.5 million for him. That's the way that we've done business in the past, transfer business, and it's never successful. So yes, it's got to be looking at who do we want to get, who do we identify, and we will need a lot of players. It's not just one or two that we need. January, as we've said before, is never the best time to go and get these players. But Paddy and I were on the other night and we were saying that this particular window is a fantastic opportunity to look at guys who are on the fringe of their international squad. Yes. With the World Cup coming up in the summer, you'll have guys who are maybe not regular starters for their club, who would like to come to Celtic on a loan, knowing that they will get minutes and a chance to impress, their national coach to say, okay, I've now seen you playing some games, you've contributed goals and assists or whatever, defensive stability to Celtic, and you're now starting to be there in the back of my thoughts for selection for the World Cup squads. So that's I think for this particular window is something that we need to look at. I used a quote earlier today to one of my friends, and probably younger viewers won't get this quote, but hopefully some of the older ones do. If you get this quote, please let me know in the comments. Celtic have gone from shopping in Goldbergs to shopping in what every woman wants. That is our recent transfer activity. And that is what needs reversed.
Yeah, I remember what everyone says. I don't know what everyone wants. I don't know about Goldbergs, I'll say that. But I'm going to throw a name at you because everybody knows a priority is a striker. Come on. He's been a striker. It's been glaringly obvious for so long. Yeah. Now, interesting. I'll say it right now. A name who was mentioned previously, and I went, absolutely not. This was during the summer. And now, maybe it shows you maybe that we're desperate, but a guy who gave us a lesson, played for Roma, remember, was a Mr. Ferguson. Who I believe, and of the understanding is he's probably going to make his way back for Roma because it's been lukewarm at points and they're kind of not too convinced. Now, this is a name that was surrounded with Celtic, touted as well, and let's make the joke, the Irish connection. Irish eyes, big Dermot Desmond, but on the blower, no doubt he'll know somebody that knows somebody and might just hook that up. Now, do I think that Evan Ferguson's an absolute worldie? Absolutely not. Do I think that he would have probably scored at least 3 of the chances it presented against Rangers at the weekend? Absolutely, I do, right? And also at a time when Celtic's board are desperately scrambling to try and get some sort of, repair job done on their reputation, I will say again, no matter what they do, it will not spare them. It will not save them. All it will do is at least try and undo some of the damage so far that they've caused. But that is it. They should still be held accountable. But there's no doubt if you go and get someone like Ferguson on loan, he's considered to be a marquee signing. It's like wheeling out, not quite as good, of course, but like wheeling out your Bellamy, wheeling out your Robbie Keane. And as we know, the mustachio man in desperate times sometimes makes mental calls that take you by surprise. Is that one that you might even get yourself behind, mate?
I'm not sure about Evan Ferguson. Was he not a midfielder? Was he a striker?
Oh, he's a striker. Big Evan's a striker, mate.
Big
He's a
striker. Okay.
Maybe not scored as many as he should, but he is a striker.
Okay. It just, I mean, maybe this was just the game against Roma, but yeah, I think he was kind of dropping in deep to kind of get the ball, and obviously, ran into positions where our three at the back couldn't handle him. He seemed to me to be a good finisher of the ball. He's got a bit of pace. He's reasonably kind of physical. He's not a kind of lightweight. So I probably wouldn't be too unhappy about that. But I think maybe someone with a bit more experience for me, somebody with a few more miles on the clock, who again, as I say, is a proven goal scorer, physical to the point of he's going to be good at holding the ball up for guys coming in behind him, because looking at Scottish football, we talked about Kyogo under Ange, absolutely running riot. But then when Brendan came in and played a different style, he wasn't playing to Kyogo's strengths, if you like, where, under Ange, it was get the ball in front of Kyogo so he can run at defenders, get shots away, score lots of goals, which he did. Brendan was very much more of the, build it up, build it up, build it up. And at that point, Kyogo had, too many defenders goal side of him, that just didn't work. So I think we again talked about Iheanacho on one of the earlier podcasts, and how his physicality suits the way or may have suited the way Wilf played, and possibly Martin, although we didn't get to see him very much because of the injury.
It's unfortunate.
So somebody in that mould, I think, because as we know now that Martin's back, I think a lot of clubs will go back to making sure that they've got plenty behind the ball, plenty of shots in the box to cut down the number of chances that we create and score.
Yeah, I mean, there's people talking here, obviously, on the Evan Ferguson thing, but a lot of folk make a good point and say that obviously parent club being Brighton, Tony Bloom invested in Hearts, that might put a blocker on it. I totally understand that. I really, really do. But I would also argue the toss and say that Tony Bloom, yes, he will be sitting there and he'll have lofty ideas that are 6 points ahead and that they can go through and snatch a title. I totally understand that. But I also believe that money does talk. Now, obviously, you're not going to go and sign him, and I know I think it's about 100k wage or something, but again, it's all about asking questions, and I think nothing ventured, nothing gained with things like this. You need to go out and stick your money where your mouth is, and I would be fairly confident that if Evan Ferguson was never going to be in the picture, he was cast back off to Brighton and they were struggling to maybe get him a club. Maybe I'm not suggesting that would be the case, but let's just say it was, and Celtic came in and they were willing to offer the money. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And I don't know if it would be something that would be, I dare say, possible, because obviously it's not coming for the Scottish League. So the whole clause of don't play against your parent club, don't play against Hearts, I don't know if that's something that could possibly be thrown in. But just thrown out there, another name as well that's coming back. There was that rumour as well that Giakoumakis was supposedly getting looked at. People say about Kyogo. Like I was repeating it here. I don't want to go back the way. I certainly don't want to go back to Kyogo. I think that he is falling off the edge of a cliff too much. Giakoumakis, again, I think it would be short-termism, But again, if he says to get him back, and even if it was a loan at the end of the season, I would rather have somebody like him than I would Kyogo. The problem is we need somebody that's big, strong, physical, and knows where the net is. If it's not going to be an Evan Ferguson who fits that sort of profile, maybe the goal scoring would be better, but we've got to caveat it. In Scotland, I think he could do a job. I think Jackie Mack is there, but on top of that, I can't actually really think of any other striker that's out there, that's known, that's available. If you get anything in mind?
Well, the kind of from the summer onwards, we were linked with this Luis Munteanu. Now, looking at his stats,
that's right, for Cluj, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. No, obviously at the time they didn't want to sell. They were looking for mega money, but we've seen in the weeks and months that have gone past, because of their financial problems, they're now dropping that price and possibly will do a deal for a much more reasonable amount of money. Now, again, looking at his stats, he seemed decent. He knows where the back of the net is. I think somebody like that who will get a lot of service from, Maeda, whoever else, guys in behind him as well. He could be, if we were to buy him for, let me put out there, if we managed to get him for 6 million, say, that still gives us money to say, okay, let's do a deal for Evan Ferguson as a loan to the end of the season. That gives you a wee bit of breathing space to say, let's not just get one in, let's get two in, because that there might be injuries or things that happen unforeseen. So yes, I don't know enough about Munteanu, but there was certainly a lot of interest in him until they decided, what the initial asking price was in the summer. And we were never going to pay that amount of money. Whether, again, any other names, there's nothing really that kind of pops out at me from abroad anyway. Here's one. You said about money talks, right? Here's one that's a bit closer to home. Claudio Braga from Hearts.
Yes, I have seen this. Absolutely. Now, let's not kid ourselves on here. I think that, as I say, money talks, right? Money indefinitely talks. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that come even maybe in January, there might be other teams that are going to look at him. I would be surprised if there wasn't. Certainly come the end of the season, I think there'll be players, teams that will look at him. But when I think that we spent £5 million on Taneke, we have spent £5 million on Balikwisha, and we are likely, I believe it's all but pretty much signed, sealed and delivered. Again, who brought this guy in, who profiled him, is going to be Tabai, coming in from Israel, again, who I profiled and says for a guy 40 games, 2 goals or a handful of assists, 2 goals, 2 assists a season. I think he's about 7 and 6 all over. For me, that's not what I want to see. It just seems like an expense. 2 million is cheap, but still expensive in the terms of what you're getting. It's speculation again. So when I put all that together and think that we've spent £10 million on absolute, in my opinion, dross between Taneke and that, why wouldn't you go and look to try and get that guy? How much is it going to cost you? Now, the problem we've always got is we bulk at the cost of anything in-house, and we've tripped up on that one with many players by not wanting to pay the sort of us to you Scottish fee, which will be slightly lofty. Would I happily go and spend £5 million on Claudio Braga? Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. Now, the reason I'm saying £5 million is because when we wind the clock back, obviously it didn't happen, and I don't think it would have worked, but when it was the likes of Miovski for Aberdeen, I was talking £5-6 million. So that's realistically what these clubs are looking for these guys. And again, it's such a small sample size. He's burst onto the scene. He's a good first season, but it is one season. So there's no doubt in my mind if Celtic offered Hearts something like £5 million, the way they look at it is one player. Now, the difference as well with Hearts is Hearts have got their system. They've already got 3 players in the bank, off the understanding. So they would just look and say, right, their future planning, when Claudio Braga goes, we've got this guy, and this guy that we're looking at. So they probably are going to be less worried about losing that one player than people think, mate.
Yeah. The reason I mentioned his name, and I'll also throw in Martin Boyle from Hibs, purely because we know these guys are capable of playing in Scottish football. A lot of the problems that we've had with foreigners coming in is that on paper, when you're looking at them, oh yeah, they're great, they can do this, they can do that, they can do this. But when it comes to actually playing in a physical league, as Scottish football is, some of them really take a backward step. You mentioned Ballykeeshwa. You know, we chased that guy for 18 months, and literally his first game, you could tell it was absolute dog meat.
Yep.
You know, that's the thing. You're looking at him saying, again, who's scouted him and chased him for 18 months? Good night, James. Thanks for tuning in. We want guys who we think can come and contribute in the Scottish League. So, yes, by all means, keep Nicholas, the likes of Nicholas Kuhn coming in, going, yeah, he's made such an impact. He's well able to play in this league. So the likes of Braga and, as I say, Martin Boyle, they can play in Scottish football, and coming to a team that's a wee bit of a step up from where they're playing just now. Maybe not so much Hearts, but you're hoping that they will react to playing with better players and say, yeah, here's a guy who can do a job in the Scottish League.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not adverse now. I understand that. See, making signings between now and the end of this window, there will be an element of here and now. That's the important thing. Now, I'm not sitting and turning around and saying that some of the names that we are discussing that are within Scottish football are going to, as the saying always goes, level us up. Are they going to level us up? Are they going to make us better when we step up to European competitions? Well, absolutely not. But I will cast your minds back. In my opinion, Celtic have always been sort of founded on the best of the rest domestically, interspersed with your international stars that are brought in. Celtic have always had something of a sort of Scottish or, from the home league backbone. And some of the best signings that we have made, all right, they might not, again, as I say, level up when it comes to Europe. But when you think of guys that we had, like your Hartleys, Robson, even, Stuart Armstrong, the likes of that, there is good players in there. Pay the money.
Christie.
Exactly. Well, Ryan Christie was a disaster at first, but he turned out quite well, and anyway like that. But the point still stands. But even again, Luke McCowan, I know he's been hot and cold, but my point is there's still a place in the squad for him.
Absolutely.
He's not suited to every single game. It's not a bad thing to have these type of guys around, and I think that there is enough guys there that you could look at and say he has got potential. Another name that folk are saying is the boy Bow at Hibs. Again, we go back to the summer. There was chat to him maybe because we knew that we needed a striking option. Did that maybe come too soon for him? Quite possibly. But again, he's at least got the attributes that we need, which is the raw power, the energy. He's strong. And when he's on it, he can find the net. Is he inconsistent? Absolutely. But would I take him again if the price is right and have him leading the line rather than Johnny Kenny? Yes, I would.
Yeah. I mean that's it. I mean, there's no, as I say, there's no guarantee that we could drop. It's not down to the amount of money. We could bring in a £10 million striker, and he does nothing for us. We could bring in a £2 million player that not very many people have heard of, and he just gets it. He just, scores, gets himself a decent run and builds his confidence to keep the scoring going. As I say, he'll get a lot of service from the rest of the Celtic squad as a team that you will get a lot of chances. And all we really need is a finisher. We don't need a guy who's going to, get the ball at the halfway line and run about mad and score loads and loads of goals. We don't need a Lionel Messi type of player. We need somebody that's just going to get on the end of things and score. That's what we're looking for.
And here's some people are saying, like Kenny, they'd rather see him go away on loan in January. Now, I think as well, this is a kind of guy that we've got certain guys in our squad that I think if you're working internally and you're looking at maybe some Scottish players now, don't get me wrong, I think we need to be going out and we need to be getting a certain quality of striker. I think we need at least 2 strikers in the door because Iheanacho is clearly, get fitness issues. You don't want to rush him back. Maeda, could he still leave in January? Quite possibly, as could Yang, so we could find ourselves in deep shit. So I think we need at least 2 striking options. I think one of them needs to be someone that's established or has been established, maybe is on the wind down. Again, that sounds short-termism, but I'm talking about the here and now. It's about getting through this season. So it could be somebody that's 30, 31, that's got a bit of establishedness about them, getting someone like that. And then I'm not adverse to somebody the like, say, young Bowie, and have that sort of young and old combination, right? But we need 2, and we need that in quick. But if we're looking at certain teams, we've got a lot of guys that would get a game elsewhere. Johnny Kenny's name came up. So again, I'm not saying Bowie's the answer and go get him, but let's just say that was what you were interested in. Yeah. You can offer and say, well, do you know what? There's our squad. This is our surplus to requirements. We'll give you such and such on loan as part of the deal. And you sweeten the nut a wee bit. And I think the Celtic need to be smart with some of the guys that we've got in the periphery, because they could probably get themselves into most teams in and around. And dare I say it as well, we're looking at the likes of Yang, Birmingham and stuff are wanting to take on Yang. Let's just say we get approached, because he probably will have a wee bit of interest from other teams down there. Then there's potential to have a look at what they've got and maybe work it in as part of a deal. So Celtic need to be also smart with what they've got. They will always complain about it's hard to get deals over the line and stuff like that. But Celtic still do have some bargaining chips left.
Yeah, well, it's not for the lack of money, but again, we need to be a bit smarter. We're not just going to throw money at the wall and see what sticks. We need to get the right kind of player in. As I said, I would be more than happy in the January window. See if it was all loan signings. It wouldn't really worry me. If we can get a few, as you say, kind of younger players that we were saying, that he's going to be here for 3 or 4 seasons. Absolutely, that's fine. What I don't want to see is projects coming in. It's not the time for projects now. It's time for guys who are going to come in. You mentioned Hartley and Barry Robson. I remember when they signed for Celtic halfway through a season and literally ran the midfield, and we clawed back eventually to win the league that season after being, I can't remember how many points behind going into the Christmas break. But yeah, absolutely. As I say, the days of a Craig Bellamy signing or a Robbie Keane, coming up and saying, we're going to get 6 months out of this guy, but what a 6 months it's going to be. As I say, your guys who are looking at going to the World Cup and saying, well, I'm not going to be a starter for my international team. I'm going to be in the squad, but if I can, where I'm sitting now, I'm maybe not getting a lot of game time. If I can get in and be playing regularly and scoring or providing assists or keeping clean sheets, then, as I say, that's going to give my manager food for thought to say, okay, I can see what this guy can do now. So he's a wee bit more in my plans. As I say, projects at this point are not what we need. We need some good quality players, experience as well as dynamism. People that are going to come out and say, right, we know the job here. I think Martin will get a good amount out of all the players that come in. Everybody seems to react so positively. Even just when Martin's putting a hand on their shoulder and giving them that wee chat, you see them puff up. Oh yeah, the self-confidence seems to grow. So absolutely, I think it's a very important January, and we definitely need to see how it goes.
Well, that's it. We will see how it goes, and we'll wind it all up there. As we say, there's many variables now. We'll see how this one pans out. I think that it is imperative that the decision's been made. We have cut the cord. We've done it. We've got rid of them. The board have admitted their failings once again, of course. But listen, we'll not forget that. That's further down the line. It's never out of sight. But at the moment, I think it just needs to sit a wee bit on the back burner.
Time and a place to deal with that.
Yeah, and on that as well, what I would say is it comes to Saturday, it's going to be a full house. It's going to be the spirit, the mood, the atmosphere will instantly be left. Hopefully, as we discussed earlier, there can be a round table situation trying to get in the rest of the fans that have been excluded, or at least those who aren't involved, shall we say, to get in, because the whole collective punishment thing. But yes, I think that there's many good things that can come if they want it to happen. It's about the desire, and we will find out what this board and what Dermot Desmond are actually really made of in the coming weeks. It's imperative that we support Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney to the end of the season.
That's when they have a love child.
Whether it's going to be, oh God, whether it's going to be a selection of loans or whatever, to me, it doesn't matter. It's, yes, the idea of loan with the option to buy is great, but we also got to remember who's going to be in charge come the summer. We don't quite know. It's just imperative to get the right fit, the right profile, the right players, and get them in. And more importantly, if it costs you a bit of that, then there's plenty of it there, go and spend it. People are saying and speculating about how much it costs to write off Wilfred Nonce and his background team. I've seen everywhere for chat of 6 million to 10 million. See, at the end of the day, who cares? That sometimes just needs to be done. Yeah. By God, we didn't spend our money on other things, and we gave the tax man so much of it. So sometimes there's nothing wrong with you holding your hands up and saying we got it wrong. They've done that. It buys a small bit of credit in the bank. But as I say, moving forward for me, 100%, it needs to be about unity. It needs to be about supporting. And again, what I would say is I am not telling folk not to. I am not saying that we suddenly forget. Not at all. No. But I would ideally not want to see big protests outside the front of the stadium shouting sack the board on this Saturday. I kind of wouldn't really like to hear it ringing round the stadium again. I wouldn't like to see people giving it hammer and tong at them as they sit there. I'm not saying forget it, get the banners out, but it should just be all about trying to rally behind this team, rally behind the manager. And you know what? We'll never forget. Celtic fans will never forget the wrongdoings of this board. I just think that, as you says, there's a time and a place. Some people say, Steve-O, you're playing into their hands. That's what they want you to do. That's how they want you to think. Smoking mirrors, you forgot. Absolutely not.
Nobody forgets.
Nobody forgets. And listen, we've got to remember, on top of his failing as CEO of this, not making decisive decisions, getting in signings that ultimately contribute to us losing out on a minimum £40 million bounty of the Champions League, put us in this position where we're behind, where we've now gotten theoretically, it's another manager, even though it's a return to it. All these things, and again, having to pay off this clown and the other clown that brought him in. That man's cost us a lot of money. Yeah. That's not going to disappear, by the way. No. That's not going to disappear. But Saturday, get behind the team, get behind the squad, and try to inject some positivity back into this situation, mate.
The season starts tomorrow, troops.
Absolutely. And here we go. We've seen it. Let's bring it up. This is the situation. There we go. He's been released on emergency. Break glass.
The tracksuit has returned.
I can't wait until tomorrow. First day of training, it's going to be a bit of this.
If you're not training with intensity and you do 3 days out of the 5 days, you'll not be in my team. I've got a good group here. And the team, the starting 11 and the subs, they earned the right. If you want the cost, just stay at home. You're not going to play for me.
There we go. That's exactly what you're going to get served
Absolutely.
up. The return of intensity. And these guys will know exactly what they're getting served up. It's going to be positive. We can only take it for there. As everybody's saying, go on, Fozzie. That's the kind of attitude I want to see there. The guy's an absolute legend. But thank you, mate, for coming in so late to sit and talk about it. It's been a manic day 2 podcasts, and thanks to everybody. We're at 250 there watching live. As I always say, if you haven't done already, hit subscribe, help us grow the numbers. It costs you nothing. Remember that. It costs you absolutely nothing. We just give. We're not like the Celtic board. We don't take your money, not give anything in return. So there we go. So thank you very much. And mate, hopefully we'll be sitting here and we'll get some signings coming in. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's never listen to the paper talk, and we're linked to this and we're linked to that.
So that.
See when they're standing there with the photographs being taken, then that's it. We'll talk about them as they arrive, and hopefully they will arrive. But yeah, I'm certainly far more positive this evening than I was yesterday evening, and I'm sure everybody watching will agree with that. As I say, the season starts tomorrow. We can't do anything about what's happened, so there's no point bitching about it. But we will not forget, Michael Nicholson will be held accountable at the right time. But let's just get on with the rest of the season.
And I hope that it's the Windsor change, mate, because we've got rid of an idiot manager, we've got rid of an idiot imposter, head of football. Peter Law is removed. I also now know, just to mention that, he moves down from chairman. I believe he's got some sort of like behind the scenes kind of just decoration title. Folk won't like that and say he'll still wield influence. I certainly hope not. I believe that's maybe more to do with allowing him to keep his job on at UEFA. So it's kind of just one of those old pals act, which again is indicative of the way that Celtic's wrong, and that's is run, and that in itself is wrong. But again, that's another chat for another day. Let's look at the positives. We've got rid of the deadwood. We've got people in that we know that we can depend on, that understand the club, that want to push us forward, that have got the best for it. And I say we will then, at the end of this period of the transfer window, believe you me, the heat will be turned up on these ones that run our club once again. And as I said and brought up the comments there, I wouldn't be surprised if there is change at the end of the season at boardroom level. We won't forget, we'll push it on, but let's get behind this team. Let's get on and win this league, mate. So thanks to all yous for joining us. Stevie, good night to yourself. Good night to everybody out there. And until the next time, take care of yourselves and hail, hail. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.